3 weeks ago, it was just another ordinary day at the office. Laura, my 7 p.m. patient, arrived, soaked from the rain. Her hands trembled as she held the cup of tea I offered. Dr. Vale, there is something following me, in the shadows. Always in the shadows. At that moment, I didn't realize it, but it was the beginning. The first warning. After Laura left, something kept bothering me. I spent the night going through old files. Marcus Chen, Sarah Powell, Richard Torres, all describing the same thing. How did I not notice before? The same presence, the same shadows, the same call. I'm on the trail, Laura mentioned. My phone shows 11:12 p.m. The air is different here, denser. Something moved between the trees. No, stay composed, Alex. You are a scientist, an observer. Just... Damn, I saw it. It was real. It is real. 4:27 a.m. I can't sleep. The records I found. Similar cases since 1973. Always in this region. Always following the same pattern. How did no one connect this before? The abandoned cabin. 7 different reports mention it. The air here, it feels like it's draining life.
Alex.
That was. No, it can't be. It was Marcus's voice. How is that possible? Days have passed. I barely sleep. The shadows. They follow me now. In the subway, at the market, in my own office. I try to convince myself it's stress, sleep deprivation, but I know it's more than that. I found something, a recording from 1973. Dr. James Mitchell, psychiatrist. He was investigating the same cases.
The more you search, the more it finds you. It's not an entity we observe. It's it that observes us. Always has.
The connections, they're all real. They're not delusions. They're not coincidences. It's a pattern that now includes me. This is my last entry. For now, I need to decide. Do I keep investigating, or... Record number 147. Date, well, that doesn't matter anymore. My name is Alex Vale. Was a clinical psychologist. What I'm going to share here may sound like raving, but I need to document it while I still can distinguish reality from whatever it is that's going on. For years, I treated patients with trauma, fears, hallucinations. I always had answers, always, until I started to notice a pattern. Something that was repeated in different reports. Something that shouldn't be there. Patient Laura Morton, 32 years old. First recorded occurrence. Dr. Vale, there's something watching me. It's not like other times. It's different. A presence. Always in the shadows. Patient Marcus Chen, 28 years old. Starts as a whisper. I thought it was the wind, but it knows my name. Doctor, there are dozens of similar reports. Very similar. As a psychologist, I know that the human mind can create patterns where there are none. But this is different. The abandoned cabin stood ahead, its roof hanging precariously. The night chill bit into my skin and brought back a sense of constant surveillance. The door creaked as I opened it. The old wood gave off a bittersweet odor of damp and neglect.
Alex.
Marcus Chen's voice crackled through the recorder, soft, almost a whisper, yet unmistakable. He had disappeared years ago. The case left unsolved. My hands shook as I adjusted the old tape, its sound brittle and worn. What I heard next made my heart freeze. distorted echoes of children's laughter mixed with the sound of approaching footsteps. I looked around, but everything was still, as if I were alone.
If you're hearing this, Alex, then you know you're on the edge, the place where they can see you too.
Fear held me in place for a moment. Each word carried a haunting warning, as if he were speaking from beyond. A chill crawled up my spine, and my gaze drifted around the room, searching for something or someone that might be watching me from the shadows. For the first time, I faced a figure in the shadows. Not an ordinary shadow, but a dense presence, moving like a wave. It pulsed in time with my labored breathing. For the first time, I faced a figure in the shadows. Not an ordinary shadow, but a dense presence, moving like a wave. It pulsed in time with my labored breathing. "Say your name, Alex," she whispered. I wanted to pull back, but I couldn't. Something inside me, a part I hadn't known existed, wanted to respond. "I am Alex Vale." The recorder emitted an agonizing hiss. I turned it off abruptly and stumbled backwards, leaning against a cold wall. My mind, which had always taken refuge in logic, was on the verge of collapse. Perception and reality are a dance, Alex. I remembered Dr. Helena Marx's words, and then it made sense. The shadows didn't just inhabit the dark corners of our fears, they emerged from them. Wave function collapse, a concept in quantum physics, where observation changes the outcome, could be more than a theoretical experiment. That's what these entities were. An endless cycle of mutual observation, a symbiosis between the unknown and our own consciousness. They weren't just observed, they watched, and that was what made them so palpable. I was the catalyst that brought them forth, my relentless pursuit fueling their being. A chill ran down my spine as the shadows around me began to move, as if they had a mind of their own. One of them stood out, taking on an almost human form, but without a face. Just two dark hollows where eyes should be. "We see you, Alex," echoed in my mind, though no mouth moved. It was a chorus of voices, familiar and strange at the same time. Dr. James Mitchell's words from the 1973 recording came flooding back. "It is not a being we observe. It is he who observes us." I understood then that the he was more than a singular entity. It was a collective consciousness, a reflection of the observers themselves. It was human fears, doubts, and obsessions, catalyzed and made real by perception. The walls seemed to move closer together, pulsing as if they were part of a living being. My vision went dark for a moment, and when the light returned, I saw scenes that could not be real. Images of myself, nights spent vigilant, obsessively revisiting patient files. Surrounded by these shadows that now played out on the screen of my mind. The more you search, the deeper the connection. I had a choice: break the cycle or be consumed by it. The reports of other psychiatrists, missing or gone mad, became clear. They had also reached this breaking point and could not return. But what if I could do differently? "I see you, but you do not control me," I said, my words coming out stronger than I expected. A muffled laugh rang out, but this time, more distant. The shadows retreated for a moment, hesitant. I stood up, my muscles trembling and my mind dizzy, but determined. I picked up the lantern that had fallen and pointed it at the darkest corner of the room. The beam of light cut through the darkness like a blade, and the indistinct figure dissipated in an instant. The cabin fell silent, the oppression fading as if it had never been. I knew that this was only a beginning. The knowledge that I had crossed the veil that separates reason from the inexplicable would now follow me forever. I had to decide whether to continue my search for the truth or to let these shadows settle in, invisible and subtle, as they had always been. This is my last entry. For now. If you're listening, it means I can still find a way back. Or maybe it's a warning that I've gone too far. But if there's one thing I've learned, it's that shadows never stop watching. And now, neither do I. Hours after leaving the cabin, the quiet of my office felt like a relief. The shadows that had haunted me for the past few days now seemed like distant memories. But deep down, I knew it wasn't that simple. The windows reflected my exhausted expression, but there was something else, a restless gleam in my eyes that hadn't existed before this journey. I gathered all the notes, files, and recordings into a box. If I decided to move forward, I would have to do it carefully, without letting the obsession become an open door to the shadows. But an insistent voice whispered in my mind, one that wasn't entirely my own. What if the answers weren't just in the shadows, but in my own perception of them? I answered hesitantly. The voice on the other end was low, anxious, but clear. Dr. Vale, this is Laura. I need to see you. Something has changed. It's not just me. They're everywhere. The connection faded to static, and in that brief moment, I could have sworn I heard a familiar whisper. A reminder that even in moments of apparent peace, the shadows continued to watch. If you've ever felt that there's more than meets the eye, or that something lurks in the shadows waiting to be noticed, perhaps this story is an echo of your own suspicions. Share your experiences, ponder the mysteries that inhabit the darkest corners of the mind and reality. After all, perhaps, like me, you'll discover that when you look into the shadows look back. In this captivating episode, I discover a recording from Marcus Chen, a man who vanished years ago. His voice, soft and echoing like a whisper, warns me of a dark presence watching closely. As eerie sounds of children's laughter and distant footsteps fill the air, I feel a creeping unease, a sense that something in the shadows is on the verge of revealing itself. The tension builds, leading to a call to reflect and share experiences about the unknown. If you've ever felt there's more than meets the eye, or that something lurks in the shadows, waiting to be noticed, maybe this story echoes your own suspicions. Share your experiences, reflect on the mysteries that dwell in the darkest corners of the mind and reality. After all, perhaps like me, you'll discover that when you look into the shadows look back at you. After Laura's call, my mind slipped into a feverish state. Thoughts ran wild, tangling into an impossible knot. The urgency in her voice, her desperate tone, and those cryptic words, they're everywhere, pulsed in my ears like a distant drum. Ignoring it was not an option. I picked up Marcus Chen's journal, the one item I hadn't fully examined yet. It was a battered notebook with faded edges. Inside, frantic handwriting filled the pages, phrases cut off mid-thought, as if he'd been afraid to complete them.